Welcome back to the news channel of Nghe An Newspaper and radio and television on YouTube platform. Here, we share and interact with the hottest and newest issues that the public at home and abroad is interested in. And here are some notable contents.
In recent days, a wave of prolonged protests by young people has destroyed many iconic structures bearing historical marks in Nepal. Large-scale protests broke out on 8th when tens of thousands of people, mostly from Rins, took to the streets of the capital Kathmandu to protest against the Nepalese government's blocking of social networks. There was a march that turned into a protest against corruption in Nepal. On September 9th, thousands of protesters broke through the western gates of Shingduba Palace, tried to enter the restricted area, and set fire to many entrances. Shingduba, located in the central area of Kathmandu, has been considered a symbol of Nepal's political power for more than a century. The building was built in 1908 under Prime Minister Chandra Sumsur and bears the mark of European architecture. This is not only the official residence of prime ministers, but also the reception place for international heads of state and royalty, such as Queen Elizabeth II in 1961 and Princess Diana in 1993. Roast Chapati Mahavan, the presidential palace of Nepal, was also engulfed in fire. On September 9th, a mob broke through the security gate blocking the entrance to the grounds and set fire to many areas. The building was built in 1923 under the Rana dynasty in the neoclassical style, with rows of columns, arches, and elaborate patterns. Rapati Bhawan was originally a private residence and later became the workplace and residence of the head of state. The entire Nepalese parliament building was also set on fire. This building was originally the Bindora International Conference Center BCC, built and inaugurated in 1993 with a style that combined modern architecture and traditional elements to deepen, with a main hall with over 1,000 seats, many small meeting rooms and exhibition spaces. The Virendura International Convention Center has been a venue for high-level conferences and international events. Since 2008, it has been converted into the headquarters of the National Assembly, closely associated with the process of drafting the Constitution and planning important national policies. In addition, on September 9th, Nepalese protesters set fire to the Hinton Kandu Hotel. Kathmandu rescue officials said that most of the hotel's facilities and assets were burned. The Hinton Kandu Hotel is considered a symbolic building in the capital of Nepal, responding to the ambition to bring the country's hotel tourism industry to the international level. The hotel began construction in 2016 and will open in 2024 with a total investment of $57 million. The architecture of the building is integrated with the surrounding landscape, one side facing the urban life of CMU, the other side overlooking the mausoleum. The building's facade features vertical glass panels inspired by Buddhist prayer flags that change color with the light. Life is slowly returning to normal in Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, on May 13th. The military presence on the streets is reduced, tensions are low, shopping malls are open, businesses are busier, and many families are starting to pray at temples. Former Supreme Court Judge Susila Kaki, 73, was sworn in as Nepal's interim prime minister. President Ram Shandura Bundin dissolved Nepal's parliament at her request and set the election date for May 0, 2026. For many Nepalis, Kaki's appointment is a symbolic move and a sign of the government's commitment to change. The decision was made after tense negotiations between Nepal's army chief Asak Ringan, President Ben, and representatives of the protest movement. Surai Berhad Ture, a 51-year-old civil servant in Kathmandu, said Nepal has its first female prime minister. "We think she will tackle the fight against corruption and promote good governance." Many young people in Nepal have welcomed interim Prime Minister Kaki, hoping that she will thoroughly address the unrest spreading in society. Dugam, a shopkeeper in Kathmandu, said forming an interim government was the right decision at the moment. The main issue that people are concerned about right now is corruption. The focus is not on who is going to solve the problem, whether it is Janet or an older politician. What is important is that corruption must end. Admitting that it is impossible to know what will happen in the future, he affirmed that he is satisfied and hopes that the tension will end. For many, Bakaki's inauguration broke the cycle of senior politicians taking over leadership, especially in a society that still favors men over women.
Brazil's Supreme Court recently sentenced former President Bolsonaro to 275 three-year prison terms for allegedly plotting a coup to overturn the 2022 election results. The ruling further strained the already tense Brazil-US relationship over the tariff war, as President Donald Trump and Bolsonaro have a close relationship and share many uncanny similarities. In January 2023, just a week after incumbent Brazilian President Lula da Silva took office, thousands of Bolsonaro's supporters stormed the country's three highest-level institutions of power, including the National Assembly building, the Supreme Court, and the Presidential Palace. The intention was reportedly to force the military to stage a coup and restore Bolsonaro to power. The riot was quelled within the day. The Brazilian court then prosecuted Bolsonaro on charges of masterminding the riot. The former president was even accused of plotting to kill Lula and Supreme Judge Alexandre de Moraes, who oversaw the election. Evidence included a copy of an assassination plan that was printed and brought to the presidential palace while Bolsonaro was still in office. The tension flared in early August 2025, when Bolsonaro began to be placed under house arrest while awaiting trial. He was eventually convicted of conspiracy to commit a coup and of participating in a criminal organization that attempted to overthrow Brazil's democratic order by violence. At 70 years old, if his sentence was not reduced, Bolsonaro would certainly never be able to hold public office. Reacting to the verdict, Trump told reporters, "I am very unhappy about this. I know President Bolsonaro and I like him. I think it is terrible, very terrible. I really think it is very bad for Brazil." U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was even more aggressive in his tweet. The political hunt for human rights violator Alexandre de Moraes continues as he and others in Brazil's Supreme Court have unjustly ruled to jail former President Bolsonaro. The U.S. will respond appropriately to this witch hunt. Brazil's foreign ministry immediately hit back, calling Rubio's comments a threat to attack Brazil's authority and ignoring the facts and compelling evidence in the case. Brasilia insists its democracy will not be threatened by Washington. Trump's strong support for Bolsonaro is more than just diplomacy. The two leaders, despite coming from different backgrounds, share strikingly similar political approaches. Bolsonaro has been nicknamed the Brazilian Donald Trump or the Trump of the tropics. Mr. Bolsonaro, a former army captain who has long been a politician, was elected president in 2018 on a wave of popular frustration with corruption and crime. During his tenure, he transformed Brazilian politics with a freewheeling, combative style. He tore up long-standing regulations, questioned the credibility of scientific findings, and attacked his opponents harshly. The similarities between the two men were further highlighted when Trump also faced criminal charges and became the first former U.S. president to be criminally prosecuted. Prominent among the charges against Mr. Trump was the May 6, 2021 riot at the Capitol, which bore a striking resemblance to the 2023 riots in Brazil. Trump himself has said Mr. Bolsonaro's prison sentence is very similar to what they tried to do to him but failed. Like Trump, Bolsonaro has pulled his country's conservative movement further to the right and has attracted a large base of loyal voters. Polls show that nearly 40% of Brazilians view his impeachment as unjust, and he would still be the leading right-wing presidential candidate if he were allowed to run. But public support has not saved Bolsonaro from a weak courtroom. The five-judge panel that tried him included a familiar face, Moura, who Bolsonaro is said to have attempted to murder. There was also a judge who had been Lula's personal lawyer, and another who was a former justice minister and close ally of the current president. A verdict against Bolsonaro was therefore seen as a certainty. Faced with such a difficult time, Bolsonaro's son had lobbied the White House for months to help his father fight the impeachment case. Mr. Trump responded to this call for help because of the escalating sanctions and threats. Since July 2025, the Trump administration has imposed a 50% tariff on most Brazilian goods. The White House has also banned the entry of many Brazilian Supreme Court judges, including Mr. Moura. The U.S. Treasury has also imposed severe sanctions on the judge. He is accused of allowing arbitrary detention before trial and suppressing free speech. On September 12, in a speech on Fox and 4, U.S. President Donald Trump said he wanted to deploy the National Guard to Memphis, a city in the Republican-controlled state of Tennessee, to crack down on crime similar to what was deployed in Washington, D.C. Memphis is in a very bad place. We're going to deal with it like we did in Washington, Trump said. President Trump said the crackdown on crime in Memphis could include federal forces, the National Guard, and even the military if necessary. ATA press conference on the afternoon of September 12th. Memphis Mayor Pong confirmed that the National Guard would be deployed to the city. Zhang said there were no details on the deployment of the National Guard, such as how many, when they would arrive, and how long they would be there. He would get that information from the governor and the federal government. However, the Memphis mayor mentioned the decrease in crime in the city over the past year. As of May 11th, there were 29,978 reported crimes in Memphis in 2025, down about 44% from 53,805 in 2024. City data also shows that homicides are down nearly 30%, with 182 reported in 2025 compared to 261 in the same period last year. The news of the National Guard deployment to Memphis comes as President Donald Trump pushes for a national crackdown on crime, including increased federal law enforcement in Washington, D.C.
On September 12, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, said that ICE agents arrested Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, an illegal immigrant, in the Chicago suburbs of Illinois. When the force asked the suspect to stop for arrest, Vegas Gonzalez accelerated straight into the formation, knocking one officer to the ground and dragging him a distance. The DHS said that the officer, fearing for his life, opened fire on the suspect. Both the ICE agent and Villegas Gonzalez were taken to a local hospital shortly after. The suspect died, and the officer was injured but is in stable condition. Some images of the scene showed Villegas Gonzalez's car surrounded by multiple police cars and federal agents after crashing into a food truck. The stop was in the heavily Latino Franklin Park area, about 20 miles from downtown Chicago. We pray for the officer's recovery. He followed proper procedures and used appropriate force to protect the community and his fellow officers, said Chikia Mullen, Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. She criticized the viral videos on social media and calls for defiance against law enforcement, which are endangering both officers and detainees. The incident is part of Operation Midway Bed, a campaign by the Trump administration to crack down on immigration enforcement in Chicago and Illinois, which is known for its sanctuary city policies for undocumented immigrants. About 300 immigration and customs enforcement officers have been deployed to the area in recent weeks. Illinois Governor J. Robert Pritzker has called for a full and transparent accounting of the shooting. While many immigrant rights groups and local politicians have spoken out against the deportation campaign, which is increasing the danger. Speaking at a press conference, Lauren Benito, director of the Immigration Coalition, said Illinois' Immigration and Refugee Agency says Trump's deportation machine is out of control, opaque, unaccountable, and causing unnecessary harm to our communities. The incident comes ahead of this weekend's Mexican Independence Day celebrations in Chicago, raising concerns about more raids. Local activists and teachers have also been distributing flyers and holding classes in recent days on how immigrants can protect themselves if they are confronted by immigration and customs enforcement. We're not encouraging anyone to resist, but people have a right to know how to protect themselves, said Illinois State Ombudsman Jessica Vkett.